Well, good afternoon, and a very warm welcome along to the Business Enterprise Show here on In2Beats 106.5 FM and on DAB. So welcome along to the show, and could you tell us a little bit about what you do, and for the more importantly for the local area?
So, well, going back, I was the MP for Bedford from 2010 to 2017. I lost in 2017 and said that was it. I was born in Bedford, had the chance to represent the town, and I gave up politics. And then I came back in 2019, just by chance, really. I'd moved away from the area. Kept my place here, but moved away. But I came back because, I thought we had made this big decision, Parliament made this big decision about Brexit. And I wanted to support the government do that. We had 2019, 2024, COVID, everything. And throughout all that time, Tony, I was always a backbench constituency MP, looking after the constituency, not getting involved in all the fun and games of ministerial stuff. But then I had a short period, and we can perhaps talk about that when I was in the Treasury. And then after the general election earlier this year, the Conservative Party had a terrible result. And Rishi asked me to become party chairman. So I was party chairman through the summer months while we went through the process of choosing a new leader. And then when Kemi became leader, she asked me to look at the titles Shadow Chief Secretary of the Treasury. And essentially that means I'm checking the work of the man who's looking at all the way the public money is spent, taxpayers' money is spent in all the departments, health, education, defence, all that. So I'm just checking, is he doing it well? Are we spending the right amount of money? Are we getting value for money? That's my job.
Right. Well, it begs the question also, so thank you very much. And I didn't even think that I said at the beginning, Richard Fuller MP. I'm really sorry about that. I put it all over social media and so on, and at the last moment. So there's this big question. Yes, I know. But the big question really, and it's in the media all the time, and basically there's a big Mickey taking out all of this, and nobody knows what to believe. This 22 billion black hole, I don't know what that means. Is this true, or what is it?
So no, it's not true. But you can move numbers around to say often what you want them to say. I think that's one of the lessons I've sort of picked up over my time in politics. And my background is in business. Your show's about entrepreneurship and local business. That was my background. And if you're running a small bit, you can't make it up. You can't make the numbers up, or at least only very few degrees of freedom in it. But if you're in government, often I found that you use numbers to back up an argument. So the numbers get manipulated to justify an action you want to take. And it was quite clear coming in, not because the Labour Party had said during the election. They said very little during the election, and they didn't need to, because most people just said, I just want to get rid of the Conservatives. They didn't really think about what Labour's doing. The just main thing was to get rid of the Conservative government. But they came in, and it was quite clear straight of all, they wanted to raise taxes. They wanted to expand the size of government, and they needed a justification for that. So they squirreled up this, oh goodness, we're 22 billion black hole that we need to fill. That's been run by the OBR. The OBR don't validate it at all. The OBR is the official scorecard for what the government's measures will do, and they've said, we can't validate that number at all. So it's more there to justify the political ambitions of Keir Starmer.
So really, it was a big fib.
Well, I know it surprised many of your listeners that politicians fib, but I think you might be onto something.
And that's a polite term I'm thinking of right now. Okay, so time in the Treasury, it must be a tremendous burden that you carry when you're trying to scrutinise someone else's spending. And if you don't have an effect, or able to have an effect, on what they say, what is the point?
Well, look, it's a fair thing. I mean, Keir Starmer has got a massive majority in Parliament, so he can pretty much do what he owns. All the decisions he's making, the decisions on taking away winter fuel payments from pensioners, that was a choice. He made that choice, taking away or imposing school tax on education, first time ever, first time in a European country's done that. That was his choice. My job is to try and look at what the impact on North Bedfordshire is, but also nationally for some of those measures. And some of them are really quite worrying. I mean, there's a lot of concern about the increase in national insurance. This is where employers are now being asked to pay extra tax for all the people who work for them. And if you're in the hospitality industry, or you're a small retailer, maybe you hired one or two people in your store, maybe 5 or 6. That has a really large impact. It means, and this has again been validated by independent research, it means that all the people who run those businesses are saying, well, maybe next year I'll hire fewer people. And so that's what we think will be, or maybe I'll pay people less next year just to absorb the cost, because I know I can't put my prices up because it's very competitive. And so I'm looking at and talking to small businesses about the impact this tax change will have, and in Parliament trying to get the government to see the impact of what they're doing. And similarly, with farmers, we have a lot of farming in North Bedfordshire as well.
Because you're going from here out to some farms, or you've probably been at some already, I think.
I have, this morning, yes.
Oh, my goodness. What time are you up?
No, not too early. But, it's really interesting. And a number of, your listeners will live in towns. So now I was MP for Bedford, and I have to say, I didn't really know the countryside. I've had to learn as the MP for North Bedfordshire about the particular issues that affect the countryside. But one thing we do know, and we remember it both from, remember when COVID struck and suddenly there was no food in the supermarkets. And then later, with the Ukraine war and the prices of food went up, we suddenly thought, oh my goodness, food is really important in this country. We need to make sure food's on our shelves. We need to know that food prices don't go up much, because they have a bigger impact on maybe poorer people when food prices go, because it's a bigger part of their budget. And one of the measures that Keir Starmer's brought in, Rachel Reeves, is this they call it agricultural property relief, and we call it the family farm tax. And when you look at that tax, and again, it's a choice, it doesn't raise much money, but the direct impact of that tax, and I hear this from talking to farmers today and last week, and I'm sure I will this afternoon, is that we're going to have less land that we produce food on, because the only way they can pay the tax is by selling land. And so do we really want to have a new tax that says we're going to have less food security in this country? That means we're going to have higher food prices in this country. I'm not sure that was the right choice.
Most people thinking quite laterally on this thing about the tax on the farms, we have an awful lot of small family farms in this country. And if you start imposing that on those farms, the only way that they can actually pay that money, if the law says they've got to pay it, is to sell the land. Yeah. And then that land goes to who? Who do they sell it to?
Well, not to farmers, and you'll have more housing or other things that get done. Look, I can understand. There are some tax advantages of this particular relief, and maybe there are some very rich billionaires who never farmed in their life, who take advantage of that and it's part of their tax preparation. Well, if the government had decided to focus their tax on their measures on those people, I don't think many people would have worried about it, but they didn't. Rachel Reeves chose to look at a level of this tax, which means that very small farmers are going to have to sell up their land. So I do hope there's still a chance for government to change their mind. And a lot of politics is persuasion. When you haven't got the votes in Parliament, all you can do is try and persuade, try and say, look, here is the impact, here's where you've got the numbers wrong. And that's part of my job, is to persuade the government where they've got their numbers wrong. And I hope for farming families across Bedfordshire and across the country, and more importantly, for those of us who want to go to the grocery store and find that the product's there and we can buy British food reliably, that the government do think again on this measure.
Is there no such thing in government as emotional decision making? Because it seems they're totally bereft of anything emotional, like the effect of taking the funding away from the pensioners, and the farming issue as well, and all the other issues. Like they're taking money away. And where's the experience in the front bench of the party of business that says, well, if we do this is going to happen, and what are the repercussions?
Yeah. Well, look,
or the impact?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pressure when you get into Parliament. A lot of people want you to spend money on something. This is an important thing. Can you spend more money? Can you spend more money? And can you spend more money on this? In the end, you've got to have the ability to encourage people to go out and start businesses, grow businesses, work harder, so they pay more tax, which is what pays for all those things that we want. And we've got to get the balance right. And speaking frankly, and we'll say this about the period of the Conservative government, we didn't really focus enough on the wealth creators in our country, those that could grow the economy, to grow their businesses, create more job opportunities, make people feel a little wealthier, and more importantly, or as importantly, to create more tax that we could pay for public service. So we got too obsessed really with the government stepping in and helping out at every single moment. And I'm a Conservative. I think the state is too big. It's too intrusive in people's lives. And more importantly, I think we need to make sure that those who can have that talent to, whatever their talent may be, that we create a society where people can make the most of their talents. And if part of that is creating a business, then great. I'm all for the people doing that, and I want to have a country that encourages people to do that.
Okay, before we go to some music, what do you think the Conservatives, and this is quite a pointed question, what do you think the Conservatives did wrong that made the public vote so much against them that they've now voted in this party under this thing in brackets called change?
Yeah, Tony, you're exactly right. Look, people can make their own views on the election. My view is that Labour didn't win the election, but people just wanted to get rid of the Conservative Party. And your question is, why did people feel that? I think it's because people felt the Conservative Party had lost touch with what real people were worried about. They felt the Conservative Party was in it for themselves. Conservative MPs were in it for themselves. They felt that we had not got our hands on the machinery of government in an effective way, and that we weren't being small c conservative. I don't mean right wing, but conservative. I mean, people put a lot of trust in their politicians, but they expect the Conservative Party to be honest, to be in it for the country's interests, and to be competent in doing that. And I think when they looked back at that last period, they said, you haven't been that. And that's what we got wrong. We lost our focus on what people wanted.
Okay, thank you for that. You're listening to the Business Enterprise Show here on In2Beats 106.5 FM and on DAB. And today with the pleasure of talking to Richard Fuller, MP, who's the MP for North Bedfordshire, and looking at places, Biggleswade, Sandy, Biddenham, Bromham, Stagston, and all the bits in between, as we say, in the second hour. Meanwhile, talking to Richard Fuller, who's the MP for North Bedfordshire. And so next, Richard, I want to talk about the issue regarding Universal Studios. And I'm calling it Universal Playground, because that's basically what it is, isn't it?
Well, it's going to be, if it goes ahead, and I'm very confident it'll go ahead, I very much hope it will. We got this huge investment coming that will really transform the opportunities for Bedford and the surrounding area. I don't know about you, but Tony, when I read this in the paper, I thought it must be April Fool's Day, because why would you choose Bedford? I mean, I love Bedford. I'm Bedfordian through and through, but the idea that it would be the site for this European theme park for one of the biggest entertainment and media companies in the world sort of struck me as very strange. But when you peel it away, it makes a lot of sense. Transportation links are really very effective. You've got Luton Airport. You've got the potential for the expansion of the A421 to Cambridge.
Are they not going to put a railway station along there as well?
They are, Wixham's. So one of the things is they want a 4-platform station at Wixham's. And just imagine, you're going to get on the train, if you're going to London, right now on the Thameslink service, we have these lovely 16 carriage trains, and like first on the train, and it's like calm all the way, pretty much until you reach St Albans if you're in rush hour. Now you're going to go so far, and then suddenly a whole bunch of tourists are going to get on, they're going to go down to Luton Airport, and they're going to get off again. That's going to be one of the sort of interesting changes. But so Universal Studios will be a catalyst for very substantial change when this decision is made. So Luton Airport already going to double in size in terms of passenger numbers. You're going to have a strengthening of the rail link between Milton Keynes and Bedford. That's part of East West Rail. I'm very much against the continuation of it, but that part will be built, and that means you can get a lot of local people can come in for that construction period. There's maybe 20,000 people needed to help build Universal Studios. But then beyond it, once Universal Studios open, it says to the town of Bedford, to the mayor of Bedford, Tom Wootton, who's doing a fantastic job, but what is the vision? What does this mean for our vision for Bedford town, so that we can be a destination of choice for some people? Because when they come to Universal Studios, people are not going to spend all their time there. They will maybe go to Cambridge, maybe go down to London. Why will they come to Bedford? And I think we've got to think very carefully about that, because it can be a really big plus for the town.
Yes, I saw one amazing figure banded around about 35.1 billion. Now, whether that is sort of like to the UK generally or to this region, I mean, if that's this region, that's fantastic.
It is.
It is a huge amount of money. But I'm confused about this decision because the more I read into this, it's sort of like a shuttlecock going back and forth, or playing tennis and saying, well, we're waiting for the government this or we're waiting for Universal that. Who is the final arbiter? Because both the present mayor and the previous mayor, Dave Hodgson, Liberal Democrat, were completely for this. So who's making what decision here?
And that's one of the things. I mean, local support, both for local parishes, are going to have a big impact in Stewartby, Kempston Rural, but the mayors, the councillors are all in favour. There's a lot of local support for this. But there is a negotiation to be done. Someone's got to pay for, maybe the changes, the railway station at Wixham's, maybe the railway station at Stewartby on the new line, upgrades for roads. So I think the government and universities are working out sort of who pays for what. So there's a negotiation. There should be. We look after taxpayers. We've also had a change of government. So will the Labour Party and government have a different view for the previous Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt? He was very gung-ho on it, wanted it to happen, quite rightly, I feel. I think there's every indication the Labour government want it to happen. So I can't say it's going to happen. I'm not in the decision process. But when it does happen, we then need, all of us locally, local politicians, local people, local businesses, have got to think, well, what is the positioning for our community? Now this big investment is being made so that we can make the most out of that 35 billion increase in economic activity that can come to our town rather than going to the other places in the country.
My head is full of so many issues around all of that. And would I be wrong in thinking that it seems that the current government want to grab hold of all the strings and ropes associated with this and make it their own? So when the final decision is made, say, yes, it was us.
I think it's pretty locked on that when the decision is made that you can expect the Prime Minister or at least the Chancellor to come here and claim credit for it. But as you rightly said, it's the people who will make this work are local people, our local representatives, our Mayor, Tom Wootton, and others who are going to then create the frame. Because the Americans it's an American company, Universal Studios, owned by a company called Comcast. They're not going to hang around. They don't want to go through a long process. So the planning process essentially will mean that once the decision is made, let's say it's early in the new year, Universal Studios want to open by 2030. That's not long to build one of these parks.
No,
so all the planning will move at breakneck speed. And so when people say, oh, well, this is what happened in my lifetime, yes, it is. It's going to happen very, very quickly. And once it's open, all the tourists are going to come. So we've got to think very quickly about how we want to position our town. I have a view. My view is that obviously I'm not mayor, so I'll have to leave this to Tom, but my view is that one thing that makes Bedford really special, and I would say unique, is our focus on families. This is a great town, a great community. Bedfordshire's a great place for you to bring up your children. It's safe, it's got a lovely environment around it, in the town and outside. And so if we can focus on that, to say, what would we do for young families? That means that they can have a day away from Universal Studios and know when they bring their children to town, it's a safe, family-oriented environment that's open to the world. The other thing about Bedford is we've got people from all over the world for many generations. So we're a very welcoming place. That's what I'd say is, here's the task for the council in the new year. Go think about that, work out where Bedford can be unique, special and different, and that will boost local businesses, local shops, local retailers in town, local cafes, very much indeed.
Can I speak about East-West Rail? Must I, he says. No, I think sort of briefly at the beginning there, you voiced your opposition. I think it's written somewhere that you are opposed to this. Now, with this thing from Universal, surely that's going to bring people from the Oxford area and way over Buckingham, and that's going to bring them over here as well. But what's your issue with it?
Well,
by the way, they're coming into the show sometime before the end of February, I think.
Well, I'm glad
if you want to join them, you're quite welcome.
I'll pass. But so look, East-West. I was in favour of the concept of East-West Rail, a connection of a rail link that connects Oxford to Cambridge and beyond that to the ports in Felixstowe and all the way to Bristol. That's I can see the logic of that. But it was a disastrous decision of Dave Hodgson, the former mayor of Bedford, to recommend a route that was going through the North Bedfordshire countryside rather than along a southern corridor, the A421 essentially, that has opened up North Bedfordshire, the rural part of our county, to the potential for housing growth. It's a very environmentally damaging route. I mean, for long stretches, it doesn't touch the ground. It's either in a viaduct or they have to create embankments, cuttings. So why was that route chosen. It doesn't make any sense. So that was really the crux, the decision of the former mayor to put it through the north, that moved me from believing it in concept to then more and more critical, and then ultimately to hostile. And because that route chosen, it cost an enormous amount for the taxpayer. So the last calculation was this railway is going to lose £7 billion for taxpayers. And when the civil servants have asked, well, how are you going to make up that £7 billion? They say housing. Now, we're already growing at 2.5 to 3 times the national average. People can see the pressure on school places, on GP appointments, congestion on the roads. We've now got to make up £7 billion in planning gain to make up for those losses. And that means you're going to find very substantial housing developments in Bedfordshire and other places just because of the railway.
Okay, you're listening to the Business Enterprise Show here on In2Beats 106.5 FM and on DAB. Today we're talking to a special guest who is Richard Fuller, MP, and he's the MP for North Bedfordshire. That's Biggleswade, Sandy, Bromham, Stagston, Biddenham, and all the bits in between. Yeah. All right, let's move on to this issue, which came to me from a few people I was talking to in Biggleswade a few days ago, saying that you were going to come on the show. And the fact that so much of the trade, so this is to do with Biggleswade, I suppose a bit to do with Sandy, but the trade from Biggleswade town centre has kind of been taken away. I suppose it's almost a village town centre, village centre really, isn't it? But been taken away right down to the retail park at Biggleswade, the sort of southern end, right next to the A1. Do the people have a right to complain about this?
A little bit, yes. I mean, you take, you've got 3 towns down the eastern part of the constituency. So you've got Potton, village of Potton, then you've got Sandy, and then you've got Biggleswade. And they're all at different stages of development. Potton's town centre is still very much a centre, a community centre. I was there earlier this year. There's a butcher who's been there for 100 years. They had their 100th anniversary. They invited the whole town to come in and have free hamburgers, free meat, and all that. It was fantastic.
Wow, 100 years.
100 years, same family running their own business. So that's what you people think about. Small town, that's our town centre. And there's a tremendous value to actually a tremendous amount of community spirit, and Potton certainly got that. Then you look at Sandy. Sandy's a bigger town, but it's still got its centre. They've got Tesco's a little bit further out, but still got its town centre. But it needs support for the town as it grows to make sure that it can maintain that level of retail. So there's a few challenges, but working really well. But then you go to Biggleswade, and over the last 20 years, a huge amount of planning and new housing development in King's Reach has been done sequentially, step by step by step, and that has created a significant sort of where's our town centre problem for the local community. They've got the old town centre of Biggleswade, and then this very vast amount of new housing that's been built sort of adjacent to it that hasn't really got just as much of a centre. And then you've got the retail exchange park. So yes, I think people are right to say we're not sure where the heart of our community is. We know where it is in Potton, we know where it is in Sandy, but in Biggleswade there's a challenge to say, with this big development, where is that new commercial centre for our town?
The lady I spoke to, they've got I think it's a gentleman's, I'm calling it gentleman, I don't know, maybe it's a mixture, but of clothing and so on, and it's, well, anyway, it was there, and she had quite a lot to say about this. But one of the bigger issues for them right now, which could easily be solved if the town council could make a decision on it, would be to extend the time for free parking. Now, currently, she said it's 2 hours, and by the time somebody's got out of the car, walked to where they're going to go, they meet a friend, have a chinwag, have a cup of coffee, and it's gone past the 2 hours.
Yeah. Look, I think she's right. So many, many, many years ago, when Frank Branston was mayor of Bedford.
Oh my goodness, that was a while back.
It was. I'd lost the election in 2005, but I cared about the town, so I wrote a paper to give to the chief executive and to the mayor about the town centre, the future of the Bedford town centre. And my view then, and it still is that the future town centre is not necessarily about retail. It's about what I call dwell time. You want people to come into a town centre and spend their time there. Maybe it's, visiting an exhibition. Maybe it's walking in a park. Maybe it's shopping. Maybe it's having a cup of coffee. Maybe it's having lunch. Whatever those disparate things may be, the main purpose to make a town centre thrive is that people want to spend more time there doing more and different things. And so freeing up parking, making it easy and for easy people to get to the town centre and very cheap for them to stay, whether it's coming by bus, frequent buses, or by car. I'm not against the car. Those, I think, are really positive things to do. You know, I think when Tom Wotton became mayor here, he's extended free parking in the town centre.
Yeah, so it's now 4 hours in that one of the.
So that's moving in the right direction. You know, you don't want to put up a brick wall to say, oh, it's going to make it really difficult for you to get in the town centre, and we don't really want you to stay. So after now, we're going to tell you we're going to price you out of staying. You don't want to do that. You want people to come into the town, enjoy it, feel the town, add vibrancy to it. Town centres, when people stay around, you see people around, then you want to come back again because it's not just you wandering around with, you know, streets that are empty. So I think in Biggleswade, the town, it's not obviously my decision to make, and I don't want to tell them what to do. I recognise the challenge in Biggleswade. I think your listener was right to write into you about it. I think the town council should look at this town centre parking, but also the Central Beds Council, the equivalent of Bedford Borough Council is Central Bedfordshire Council. They should look at what support they can give to Biggleswade. Can I say one more thing about Biggleswade? Because it's really interesting when you go along to some of these meetings. I went along, and I'm not a big fan of football. I just want to put that out there. But they were coming to talk about green spaces as King's Reach had expanded in Biggleswade. And they showed these plans, the first plan in the 1990s, the second plan in the early 2000s, the third plan at the 2010, always offering more green spaces, recreational spaces for people. And every time they put the new plan, the area that in the old plan had been for a green space had been filled in with more housing, and they moved on to another one. And a gentleman came along. He said he was a butcher in Biggleswade. He said, my dad was a butcher. He said, I was born in 1960, about my age. And he said to the town council, he said, today we have exactly the same number of recreational clubs to go to, sporting clubs, recreational clubs in the town, as we did in the 1960s. And the town centre and the town is now 5 or 6 times as big.
Okay, let me put this to you. You said you don't want to tell the town council or even the Mid-Beds Council what to do. And I've put the bell there just in case you want to stop me from talking. If you were
I'll read it now if you like.
If you were to say to somebody from Mid-Beds Council now, look, you need to do this to help Biggleswade, what would that suggestion be?
I would say get a grip on the new, it's another area of new development, and lobby the national government for town centre funds. There's been 5 or 6 years of monies that have been available for towns to really renovate their town centre. I would say use that, but do it essentially to put a connect. I don't think you can find a new town centre. I'm not an urban planner, but I think with Biggleswade, I'd say make frequent bus connections around, like a loop around the town, so that people can get around much more easily. So you stop this potential conflict between the retail park, the old town centre, and King's Reach itself. You get a bus that makes you can go wherever you want to go. I think that's what I would recommend.
So if they're placing the new bus station down near the retail park, so perhaps a bus number can be routed that does actually do that.
Yeah, I like buses. Okay, I'm ringing the bell.
No, we didn't hear it. There you go.
Right. Don't make me talk about too much detail about bus planning and all that, Tony. I'm not an expert on that, and you'll get me doing what politicians like to do, which is sort of talk about things I don't know anything about.
Go beyond the actual subject. So in the end, you're not talking about the subject. There was the.
It becomes a wish list.
There
we go. I create a wish list, and then sometimes I get into trouble because you say things against what the local council want or your local party want, and then you're in a lot of trouble.
Right. We're about to end our conversation here with Richard Fuller MP. It's been really interesting, Richard.
Thanks, Tony.
Can I ask you something about process? It's been bothering me for absolutely ages. Every time I watch Prime Minister's Question Time and all this type of stuff, because I'm sort of kind of hooked to it. I just like to watch the dynamics. Now, you got the speaker sitting up there, and he leans across to somebody that's in their official cloak and everything, and it's like they've got a list there, I assume, of the people who are due to ask questions. Right. Does the Prime Minister have a list of the questions are going to be asked?
Well, that's a trade secret there, Tony.
I think the assumption is they do have a list because they're always reading the script when they're answering.
So let me. Obviously, if you're on the government side, it's different from if you're on the opposition side. So if there's a list of questions on the opposition side, you're not going to tell the Prime Minister what you're going to ask, right? So you want to catch.
So
the Prime
Kimmy
Minister
won't
out.
be telling him what I'm going to ask.
He definitely won't. The Leader of the Opposition will definitely tell the Prime Minister. But as a backbencher, you probably won't tell the Prime Minister unless it's a local issue where you really want him to give an answer to you. So, for example, if I were to ask a Prime Minister's question about Cleat Hill, issues in Cleat Hill recently, about the gas explosion, I'd really want to let him know it's coming because I want him to give a serious answer to it. So him knowing about it means he won't just throw it away. He might, but just blasé. But if you're on the government side, then if they do a ballot every week of MPs, that's why you see some names on the paper what question they're going to ask. So if your name comes out and you're a loyal, quote-unquote, loyal backbencher, you'll get a call probably the day before. So the Prime Minister would like to know what question you'd like to ask. And then you can either decide to tell them or not. And you get credit points, I guess, if you tell the Prime Minister what you want. Sometimes, and this is really telling you a trade secret, sometimes, it may not surprise you, that the Prime Minister's team will say, well, that's a really good question. But the question the Prime Minister would really like you to ask is this question.
Yeah, that figures. If you look at the dynamics behind the way that the questions are being asked, I think a lot of this can be assumed by somebody that, I'm a frequent watcher of it, and if I'm not available, I'll record it so I can see it afterwards. But okay.
But it's a show, right? The Prime Minister Questions is a show. And one of the things that's very frustrating about the current Prime Minister, he doesn't even try to ask a question. He's not very funny, and he's not very adept at manoeuvring away from questions. He just basically doesn't answer the question. But the fundamental thing about Parliament is that PMQs, Prime Minister's Questions, which people tend to watch, they say, oh, it's all you're just getting at each other, and that's true. But that isn't how most question times work, and it's not how a lot of Parliament work. A lot of Parliament works on good advice, talking to other MPs of all parties, trying to do what's right for the country.
Okay, I know there's loads of other stuff I'd like to ask, but the thing is that you've got to hurry off because you've got
to a farm.
You've got some farming to do. I hope you're going to be jumping on a combine harvester or something. No, it's too late in the year for that. Perhaps doing some ploughing.
Well, maybe. I think probably if you see my driving, well, maybe actually on the fields I'll be safe. We'll see.
Yeah, there's no cars to bump into.
That's true.
Richard,
Thanks,
thank you so much for coming in. It's absolutely brilliant. Do come back, see us sometime, not too far into the new year, and I'm sure we'll be able to talk about some more local things, because there was a list of things down here, but as ever, time sort of takes us away. And as this book says here, right, how to be awesome.
Yeah.
Right, so be an awesome MP for us.
I'll do my best.
Right, okay.
Merry
Thanks so
Christmas.
much, Richard.